Welcome back, everyone. It's Dr. Lindner. In the next video lecture, we are going to be talking about muscle tissue. So we're still on the category of tissues. We've covered epithelial tissue. We've covered connective tissue. Those are pretty large topics. Muscle tissue is a little bit friendlier. It's a little bit easier to understand, and it flows pretty quick. So um, muscles have the ability to contract. When we say muscles have the ability to contract, the term contraction, most people assume that it means shortening. Like a muscle shortens, it's contracting, but it's not entirely true because when muscles contract, they can contract in a shortening manner, but they can contract in a lengthening manner. Okay, the term contraction really means tension, that there's tension that's being generated in that tissue. Now, the three types of muscle tissue are skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. And the only one of the three that's consciously or voluntarily controlled is skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is basically any muscle that it's attaching to your skeleton. Cardiac muscle and smooth muscle, they're both involuntary. Cardiac, obviously by its name, cardiac is going to refer to the heart, and smooth muscle is going to be associated with blood vessels, blood vessels. It's associated with viscera or your organs, like the small intestine and large intestine and trachea, uterus. There's smooth muscle involved with those organs, which are involuntary. I mean, you can't consciously have a woman contract her uterus. It's involuntary. It happens based on hormonal responses, right? You can't tell an individual, hey, your heart is beating 90 beats per minute. We want you to slow it down to 70 right now. Go, right? You can't voluntarily do that. So skeletal muscle is also known as striated muscle because it has striations. The way the light passes through these protein fibers are called actin and myosin, and we will learn a whole lot more about actin and myosin when we get into muscle physiology in a separate week. But these are contractile proteins, and the way the light passes through actin and myosin, and actin is the thin filament, myosin is the thicker filament, actin is thin, myosin is thicker. The way the light passes through these thin and thick filaments, it gives it a striated type of appearance. So these are long, cylindrical, multinucleated cells. They have obvious striations, and they're involved in voluntary movement and locomotion. They're involved in facial expression. Again, all voluntarily controlled. Back here is the triceps, and antagonistically in the front of the arm, we would have the biceps, right? So these are consciously, voluntarily controlled, which is different than the cardiac muscle that's going to be associated with the heart. So if we look on the lower left, here is the right atrium, here is the left atrium, here is the right ventricle, and here is the left ventricle. And the upper chambers are going to contract in harmony, and then the lower chambers are going to contract in harmony. And the way that they contract in harmony is that there must be a very important type of communication that takes place between the heart cells that makes sure that this heart cell here and this heart cell here and this heart cell in the other chambers, how do they know to contract at the exact same time? It's got to contract in sync, in harmony, okay? And the way that it does that is that it has these intercalated discs, which are these unions between one heart cell and another. So you have these intercalated discs. These intercalated discs are only found and associated with cardiac muscle. It's not found anywhere else in the body. And where we have intercalated discs, if we were to separate these, we would find what we call gap junctions. Now remember, cells come together to make tissues, and cells are held together by different types of junctions. Some are called tight junctions, some are called gap junctions, some are called desmosomes, hemidesmosomes, adherens junctions. So in cardiac muscle, we have gap junctions, and gap junctions are designed for super fast, rapid forms of communication so that this heart cell here, number one, can send a message here to number two, to number three, to number four, instantaneously, and to both chambers, to both atrium at the exact same time. It's brilliant. It's amazing how this works. Cardiac muscle is also highly branched. If you look at it, you could see there's a branch here, another branch here. Here's a branch. They're made up of all these separations, all of these branches, a branching type of network. We don't see these branches here in skeletal. It's very linear. So when it's highly branched, it's cardiac. They are generally uninucleated, not multinucleated. You have these intercalated discs. Again, you could see that there are branches there. And cardiac muscle contracts for the sole purpose of propelling blood into circulation. Okay, and it's involuntarily controlled. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is also known as visceral muscle because we'll see it in the esophagus. We'll see it in the stomach. We'll see it in the small intestine. We'll see it here in the large intestine. Smooth muscle, we'll see it also in arteries. Okay, so if here is the inner lumen or the inner wall of an artery, this is epithelium, then here is the smooth muscle around it, and then here is elastic around that. So you have number one here, that's epithelial. Then we have number two, that's smooth muscle. And then number three is elastic tissue out here. It's this smooth muscle that contracts. So it's going to either dilate this lumen or it's going to constrict the lumen. It's this smooth muscle that makes blood vessels constrict or dilate. When it constricts and this lumen gets smaller, the blood pressure goes up. When it relaxes and dilates, when the smooth muscle relaxes and this dilates, it opens up, blood pressure goes down. Okay, so we'll find smooth muscle in blood vessels, we'll find it in organs, the uterus, the stomach, small and large intestine. Again, it's you can't control it. It's uncontrollable. Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about the